privileged to be part of this story because we've seen it grow from when we were kids, and now it's one of the largest, very homegrown Indian brand has somehow made it to the top. And it's just a masterclass in being resilient, being able to battle war after war. For those who don't understand the number, it's the population of Greece. So that's a whole country of subscribers being added every month. It's a battlefield where everyone is bleeding, but no one's winning. If you make an industry that easy to enter, a lot of people are going to enter it, and that's exactly what happened.
You really did explain till 2015, but I think the real game changer, which was not only for Airtel but the entire telecom industry, was the arrival of.
Mota Bhai somehow just manages to screw everyone's happiness, no? Hello and welcome back to the podcast. My name is Ayush.
Hello guys, Pratik here.
We're back this week with yet another stock, but before we do any of that nonsense, we at Rupeeting do portfolio reviews for free. If you think you need a fresh set of eyes on your portfolio and you've been investing for a while, just go to our website. You'll see a icon for your free portfolio review. Upload your portfolio there, and our team will ensure that we do a deep analysis on where you've gone right, where you've gone wrong, and you'll also get a free call with our fund manager as well.
Yes.
Perfect. So avail of that service, even if it's for fun. You could do it just for the heck of it. If you want real advice, then that's available to you too, all for free. That's just how nice we are. Coming to how nice we are, this time also we're coming with quite the narrative in the stock market, and it's a story that's been playing out for, I think, since the early 90s. And we're privileged to be part of this story because we've seen it grow from when we were kids, and now it's one of the largest, one of the top 10 most valued companies in the country in terms of its stock price. This company is none other than Bharti Airtel, one of the largest telecom operators of the
Finally, a
nation.
company deep dive which we are doing from the telecom sector, right?
Exactly. Surprisingly, we've not done a
Yeah.
telecom. I mean, it's such a good story that we've somehow missed, but figure not, because we've covered it this time. But I think this milestone of it becoming one of the top 10 most valued companies happened quite recently because of, I think, its stock price. Let's just take a look at where it's at. So right now, as we record this, it's trading at 1863, and it's rallied by 17% this year, 42% in the whole 1 year down, and in the last 5 years, it's grown by about 3 times. So it's fair to say that this is something that is possible for a company of Bharti Airtel's stature. But the story is a lot more than just stock price rally. It's a lot more than it just being the largest telecom operator. In fact, a fact that we came across was, so there's this number called the average revenue per user, which is how much each user of their telecom operator is able to contribute to the operator. And for Airtel, it's a 245 rupees, which in absolute doesn't make any sense, but it's the largest or the highest number in India and amongst the highest in all of Asia. So that's over 20, 30 telecom operators that we're competing with. And Bharti Airtel, a very homegrown Indian brand, has somehow made it to the top. And it's just a masterclass in being resilient, being able to battle war after war in terms of not actual war. I don't think we take this term very loosely because war actually ho raha hai. But it's had a lot of trials and tribulations in its 20 plus year career.
A lot of ups and downs, right?
Absolutely. And I think that's what we're going to cover here, where I think we've boiled it down to like 2 or 3 ups and downs that we found. So we're going to cover it in acts because that's how narratives flow, right? We do it as climax and then a plot twist and then a plot twist and a climax. So that's what we're going to do for Bharti Airtel. But let's just do a little bit of a time travel back to how it even started. So it started actually in the early 70s because this 18-year-old boy named Sunil Bharti Mittal, who is the founder, CEO, he was the son of a very respected politician back then, I think from Ludhiana or Punjab or somewhere. And he began building a business of bicycle parts and steel manufacturing components and stuff
At the
like
age
that.
of 18.
At the age of 18.
So
He
basically, he
started
had a business acumen.
since he was a kid, exactly. And I believe there was a factor that I read that he started with a mere 20,000 rupees or something like that he'd borrowed. And he just had that knack for building businesses, turning them around, just getting as much money as he could. And towards the end, or rather the start of Bharti Airtel, Sunil Mittal was in the business of push button phones, which was a huge, huge deal back in the 70s. And I think all the way up till the 90s. And it was just like new technology, right? Like people were getting into cellular networks, people were from the privileged backgrounds were able to call small people within the country and were able to afford that kind of premium of 16 rupees a minute. That's how much it used to be at the time. And that's when the government in, I think, 1992 decided that, okay, we're going to open up licenses for people to become telecom operators. And they had to pay a fee for it, of course. So Bharti Airtel, or Sunil Bharti Mittal, decided to take up that opportunity and get that license in collaboration with a French telecom operator back then. And it started Bharti Cellular 2 years after getting the license. So 1994 starts the beginning of Bharti Airtel's journey. And they launched their first mobile service in Delhi. They were one of the few players. So context, back in the 90s, there were, I think, more than 10 operators back then, with the largest ones being BSNL and MTNL. But all of them were region specific. So there'd be one South Indian operator, there'd be one Mumbai Delhi operator, there'd be one Northeastern operator. And BSNL and MTNL were fairly larger in size. But Delhi, Mumbai was the ones where there was most competition. So Bharti Airtel entered a market where it was new, it was riddled with players, and yet it managed to somehow carve its niche because of a couple of factors. So over the next 15 years, so when it started, let's say 1995 to 2010, that's about 15 years, right? That's how long it took for Bharti Airtel to really carve that niche. So there were three tailwinds of sorts, essentially. One was the national telecom policy that struck up in 1999, which basically allowed almost anyone to become an operator. They just waived off the high licensing fee that you have to pay upfront, and it became a sort of a revenue sharing model with the government or the regulator. So you didn't have to have a lot of money to begin with. You could become an operator just as is. So that really paved the way. Second was, so as we mentioned already, there was a whole premium segment for telecom, right? Like only a certain affluent category of Indians could afford calling. And
Yeah, obviously, if it's 16 rupees per minute, I'm
yeah, I mean,
sure.
if we don't pay that much
Yeah,
now, so okay, for context, guess how much we pay now? 16 rupees a minute in
I'm sure
1995.
less than 1 rupee for sure now with all these
So how
advancements.
many years is that? That's 30 years, right?
30 years, yeah.
In 30 years, we've gone from 16 rupees a month to 0.3 rupees a minute. 16 rupees a minute to 0.3 rupees a minute. That's an insane
Mm.
strategy that I think Bharti Airtel saw coming. It went from being a premium product to a mass market product, and that was the entire intention. And then just the marketing efforts, right? Like I think a lot of us remember this Express Yourself marketing campaign where A.R. Rahman had created a tune for Airtel. If the editor can put it in the next 5 seconds, then do that. Because that's a very nostalgic moment for people from the early 2000s. And at the time, it was a huge wave of telecommunication for India because between, I think, 2004, 2003 to 2015, India was adding about 15 million subscribers every month. And 15 million, for those who don't understand the number, it's the population of Greece. So that's a whole country of subscribers being added every month. And it reached, I think, a total of maybe around 500 million users. I think, yes, by 2010, India had reached 500 million subscribers of telecom operators totally. And Airtel had carved out a 28% market share, becoming the largest telecom operator in just 15 years of starting its business, from being a nobody in the industry to being the best in the industry. Now, I think there's a couple of numbers again that we can look at. Airtel had 120 million subscribers in 2010. They had crazy margins at 33% EBITDA. They had a market share of 28%, as we've already mentioned, and their average revenue per user was 131. So this made it not just affordable, but it made it more margin accretive for them because their immediate peers, which were Vodafone and Idea, which were actually separate entities for the Gen Z and Gen Alpha kids who don't know that, they were two separate companies back then, and they were falling short in terms of number of subscribers by about 20, 30 million each. They were faltering in margins and they were much smaller in size in terms of market share, with Vodafone being at 20% and Idea being at 12%. And everyone else was in single digits, including the mammoths like BSNL and MTN. So that's the kind of initiative, innovation, and just foresight that Bharti Airtel had. And it's a lot of things, right? They were asset light. They used to outsource a lot of their telecom management. They were very innovative, and they had that unified Airtel brand to support all of it. So 2010, 2009, sorry, 1995 to 2010 was great, a great 15-year period. But this is when I think some of the nonsense starts beginning for Airtel, because if you make an industry that easy to enter, a lot of people are going to enter it. And that's exactly what happened, where I think there were over 20 telecom operators entering at the time. And in 2010, this very monumental thing happened in the telecom industry, which was 3G auction. So 3G internet was a huge move back then. I don't think, I mean, do you remember accessing 3G internet? We were 10, maybe a little 10, 12 years old
I
back
might
then.
have started my journey with 4G. I don't remember using
Right. I
3G. Yeah.
think 3G though, I only remember because it used to be such a foreign concept that I used to maybe see it at a cyber cafe
Mhm.
or something like that, where we're playing like a game and then you
और
come
when there
across.
was 4G नया नया तभी if 4G खत्म होता था you used to get 3G plus
Exactly,
और
exactly.
हाँ
So
वैसे I knew yeah there is
we
a
remember that. So this was like a
3G
huge move
concept.
towards 4G. So the 3G auction. So why it's so important is because all of those telecom operators then had to bid for those for that spectrum, right? So how that works is you bid a certain amount and you get a certain chunk of how much internet you can give to the country. It's a very simplified version, of course. But to put numbers to it, 20 odd telecom operators pooled in and spent about 67,000 crores back in 2010, which is, I mean, it's not a small number now. 15 years ago, it was an even larger number, out of which almost 13,000 crores was spent by Bharti Airtel.
Almost 20%.
Exactly. So, you know, when they have that kind of spending power, that they're going to make it regardless of competitors. So there were new entrants like Telenor, Tata Docomo. I think that's a number. Docomo had like a very catchy song. I remember that. MTS and a lot of these other players who had got like small chunks. But the only way to compete in a market that large is you cut the price. So there was price wars happening left, right, and center. Where I think in 2010 is when we really hit the lows of what we call as talk time, where it reached zero point 0.5 rupees per minute, and they started introducing data packages as a combined offer. There was postpaid, there was prepaid, so many options and so many cheap options that Airtel had to do something, right? So what they did was they again, a lot of their prowess goes into how much they can outsource and delegate. So they did a lot of that by involving IBM and stuff like that to make cost savings happen. They diversified, they spent a lot on expanding not just their India presence but in Africa, which now contributes about 20% of their profitability. And they had the whole DTH thing, so there was cable network, there was internet. It was a whole new thing, and they were the first to launch what Pratik said, 4G. So while everyone else was still stuck on 3G, in 2 years after the 3G auction, they had launched 4G in Kolkata. So it's brilliant how they managed to stay afloat despite so many competitors, so much price war happening, and having spent so much money in a very capital intensive industry. So yeah, I mean, I think there's a quote that we'd come across from Gopal Vittal, who was the CEO back then, and he said, "It's a battlefield where everyone is bleeding but no one's winning." So everyone was losing money. It was a horrible time for telecom. I think at the time stocks were just plummeting left, right, and center. But that statement that he made, like everyone's bleeding but nobody's winning, that's clearly not true. And it's not an insult to him, it's actually a very big compliment because Airtel won despite all of that. Yes, their market share went from 28% to 23%, but they were still the largest. It's just that it got chipped off by all the other competitors. So Airtel was still at 23% largest with about 226 million users. Now, again, for context, by this period of time, so 2010 to 2015, where we first took initially 15 years to build a 500 million subscriber base in the country. The next 5 years, 2010 to 15, added another 400 million subscribers just like that. So we crossed 900 million, out of which 230 million was Airtel. So it's brilliant how that happened. Their margins actually grew somehow from 33 to 34% EBITDA, and all of it's just owed to how quickly they think on their feet. I mean, this is a huge problem to have, right? Randomly the government is like, okay, anyone can become a telecom operator, it's now cheap to do so, you have so many people with so much money competing for the same amount of people, and it's a fast growing industry where you have to innovate constantly. So being able to do all of that while also being profitable and retaining market share and being crazy good as a brand, not just in India but Asia, Africa, everywhere, I think that's huge to do as a company. And their stock price, I mean, they listed back in, actually let's do that, let's do some live looking at the price. They listed back in 2002, and 2010 May their price was about 300 bucks, and by 2015 it went to, wow, this is really surprising, it stayed at 300 bucks.
I mean, yeah, the company grew. You told that, ARPU bada, market share bada, they were
Right.
able to maintain the margins. But then I think markets might have thought that, there might be competition.
Yeah.
Same multiple वापस नहीं मिल पाएगा.
Correct.
There
Fair
might
enough.
be ups and downs. So maybe that is why the market didn't have that confidence that, they might
Possible. I
be.
mean, that's a very logical
And
thing to
that is
think
why
of.
I think no other reason because
Fair.
clearly, as you mentioned, that Airtel has done well, and it
Right.
is seen by the numbers also.
Correct. But I think this is where that concept that we always talk about, valuations, is a combination of earnings and sentiment, right? So while the earnings really supported it, that kind of competitive market seldom allows for people to think ki, oh, Bharti is the best. Just like how it happens with like airlines, right? Even though everyone knows Indigo is the most profitable airline in the world now, they've surpassed Ryanair. No one really wants to invest as much because they're scared that this industry is so volatile and so regulated and so open for everyone to enter that anything can happen at any point of time. But yeah, Bharti Airtel crazy. They really conquered their first problem, which was competition, and then second problem, which was 3G auction, which allowed a lot of people to enter, and they've conquered that. But I think Pratik will now talk about the largest problem I think they've had as of now. Please go ahead.
Yes, I think you really did explain till 2015, but I think the real game changer, which was not only for Airtel but the entire telecom industry,
Oh my god.
was the arrival of Jio.
Mota Bhai somehow just manages to screw everyone's happiness, no? But in a good way, in a great
Yeah,
way. Please don't,
like yeah,
please don't shut
Motawai
down.
did
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, well for this
Well, for
industry
the
at least, and
industry.
people are really happy.
Correct.
So I think yeah, Jio came in 2016 with a bang, free calls, almost free data. Like people, they are trying to churn money out of the users, but they're like, no, we don't want money. I want market share. I want this whole market by myself for myself, and they started doing that.
I think it's because they're so large and so capital heavy that they
That is the
can
thing.
afford to
Yeah,
do that.
Motabai was able to afford it because he already had the cash cow in the form of his
Exactly.
O2C and
Exactly.
petrochemicals business. That is why he could take such a risk. So what had happened during that period was the data prices, I think before 2016 or before Jio were, I think in the average range of I think around 220 or 250 rupees
Whew,
per
that's
GB.
expensive.
Yeah, the average came down to 10 rupees per GB
Oh God.
just because of Motabai.
Bhai.
And obviously that had to happen if the data is so low. If you're providing cheap calls, obviously your ARPU has to fall down, and that
Right.
did happen. And because of that, the competitiveness of this industry also increased. And not everyone could be were able to stay profitable, or were able to stay afloat in the industry. So I think more than 7 or 8 operators, exited the industry or they merged with the leaders. And Jio also took a big capex, I think, at that time. So I think in the range of around $30 billion,
Oh my
the
God.
capex did during the three.
That's a
Obviously, if
mammoth to
you're
play
entering
with.
so late, you already have players like Airtel, Vodafone, Idea, dominating the industry. I think those three were the major
It's just the three
leaders
of
till
them.
then. So obviously, if you want to enter, you need to have that massive infrastructure at least to reach the same scale. And
Correct.
for that, you need to do.
Cash burning.
Yes, so they did that, and again, we found a quote where the CFO stated that, we are fighting for survival. This is not a price war, it's a war of attrition.
I
And
mean,
that did
yeah,
happen, right?
attrition of players.
Players.
Like people didn't exist
Yeah,
only,
so I think only after Jio entering, only three players were left standing, and those were Airtel, Jio, and Vodafone and Idea. So Vodafone
which
Idea
combined
merged
as one.
again. So yeah, that happened.
I mean, you know what's, I mean, YouTube may censor this or not. You know it's fucked when two largest players among the top three have to merge to
Merged.
survive, to just to survive. And right now also they're not doing very well. So the fact
Right
that
now, also it's because of the government, and I think
they're
government is also
sustained,
playing a major role to
of course.
help them stay afloat because they won't let an industry be run by two players.
Yeah, I mean, duopoly is just not
Yeah.
gonna work.
So as we were talking that ARPUs also fell. So I think average was I think around 120 rupees. It came down to
Oh,
70 rupees
oh God.
after Jio coming in.
Oh shit.
So that happened.
This is the
So
industry average you're talking
yes,
about.
yes, industry average.
And
Yeah,
I think when we were talking about, so if we're talking just about Airtel, in the 2010 to 15 era, theirs was almost touching 200.
to 198 rupees. Yeah,
And now it's, I mean, like in this 2015 era, what were the numbers?
they came down to 129
Oh
rupees.
God.
But they still were able to maintain their margins because of their
It's just
they're
crazy how they're
just
able to
able
do
to
that.
outsourcing stuff. They haven't been much capital intensive. So yeah, because of that, they were able to manage their margins. But what is interesting is market share. I think was in the same range. I think it was in the range of 25 to 28% there. But what is interesting is Geo, which had 0% market share in 2016. By the end of 2019, they reached around 30% of the market. They captured around 30% of the market. Again, it's going to happen when you are giving out freebies.
Free. I think they had the phone as well,
Yeah, they
right? That
also
they used to
started
give.
those phones, but I don't think they were a big success. But then, yeah, they're.
Do you know this movie Kingsman?
I've heard about this
So
movie.
in the Kingsman movie, I think it's Samuel L. Jackson who is the villain in the movie, and he's also like a very rich person who wants to enter the telecom industry, and he sells free SIM cards and free phones to everyone. But what happens is it has a frequency that turns everyone into killers. So when this came out, and Mota Bhai being Mota Bhai, and this rollout happened, I was convinced that मेरी maid के पास ये phone है, SIM card है, phone है, एक दिन frequency बजेगा, सबको मार डालेगी. So I mean that's just like like a fun anecdote. But yeah, Airtel survived the Geo storm, which was something that most people didn't. So there's something to their story
Yeah. So
worth
again, yeah,
mentioning.
how did they survive? Again, it was because of their adaptability, the way they were able, the scale which they had. So what they did was they started acquiring distressed assets, which is the best thing to do.
So
Like
all
what is
the
happening in cement right now,
correct
Airtel did it back then.
in 2015.
2015,
Crazy.
2016. So I think they acquired Telenor, Tata, Videocon, Ticona, and
So all those players that
all
were
of the
dying
players,
out,
yeah. And because of
pretty
that, they
cool.
got their own spectrum. They got
So
their
that's probably
spectrum,
how
yeah.
they maintain market share
Yeah.
also, right? Inorganic,
And subscriber तो होंगे ही थोड़े
of
only then
course.
these companies are also able to survive. So they
Correct.
got the subscriber base also.
Nice.
So that was that. And then again, they started, focusing on premiumization. So they started providing value-added services and they cut down, all the loss-making businesses. Whichever was being a burden on their cash flows or their profit, they just immediately started cutting them down to focus more on the high margin. That is why they are able to still maintain their margins, I think 33,
Incredible.
35%. Yeah.
It's incredible how they've maintained that for
Yeah.
20 years
And what is
almost.
interesting, capital intensive है, फिर भी they are
फिर
able to
भी
maintain 35%. नहीं तो
it's crazy. And I think for context we should give that while they're at 33, 35 constantly, I mean upar niche, and see, usually when you see margins not growing at all or growing by 1%, you think कि ये क्या हगू company है. But we don't take into consideration that the industry has gone through so much upheaval that it's impossible to remain that profitable, and yet they've managed that. And while the others have gone from 30% to 28% to 25% in terms of EBITDA margins. So crazy, crazy
that
ability
is
to
there.
recover.
And I think what they did was they realized that digital is the future.
Right.
So then they started launching Airtel Extreme, the Airtel Payments Bank also, which has now recently started becoming famous.
Oh, incredible.
So that is
I
that.
think they
Then
had that app Wink also for
Wink,
music,
yeah,
right?
music, yeah. Just
हाँ,
like Jio Savan,
correct,
they
of
have
course.
Wink, yeah.
गोली मार दो भाई.
So that is there. I think yeah, because of all these actions, they were able to survive the Geo storm.
Right.
But they were just able to add, I think, around 60 million subscribers, and Geo was able to add 306
Oh
million
my God.
subscribers in the period of 3 years.
4, 5x, my God.
Yeah, it just shows how badly Geo wanted to, disrupt this
And I think
market.
they've done their
They've
job.
done that,
They've
yeah.
done their. In
No doubt
fact, I
about it.
think they're going public, right? I mean, that's the rumor
Yes.
at least that they're going to go public in the next year or so.
But
Crazy.
then that is also, there is something that bhi hoga, but nahi
हाँ,
hota. There is some delay or
true.
some regulatory issue which comes up.
Fair enough.
So yeah, but then what usually happens is if you have been able to maintain that pace of growth, there are always some consequences. But if you are able to grow at such a good pace over the past 15, 20 years, I'm sure you must be taking on debt or you might
Oh
be then
God, is this
looking
another
like
plot twist for
yeah.
Airtel?
So again, there is this dull period for Airtel wherein they had around 1.6 lakh crores of debt only because of the spectrums which they bought
So
and
that's just 1.16 lakhs
1.6 lakh crores of debt
just for spectrum
just for
dues.
spectrum, yeah.
So again, for the audience who might not be aware, spectrum dues is basically, so when they bought the spectrum at each auction, they didn't really put cash in. They've been accruing that debt
Yes.
with the government. So they're entitled to pay this to the government at some point. Oh God! And that's so 1.16 lakh crore, again for context, is almost how much we make monthly in GST revenue. So
Yeah.
that's insane.
The whole country.
The whole country. Sorry. Yeah, the whole country.
So, yeah. So the only thing was that because of such huge pile of debt which they had, it was dampening their profitability. Obviously, interest rates, I think they were around 10% for them. So 1.6, yeah. So again, a huge dent on their cash flows. So what had happened was, and because of that, during 2019, Airtel's ARPU also fell down to I think around 85 rupees.
Oh, that's a
At the
huge
peak,
dent.
it was
Huge dent.
198. It came down to 85 rupees after Geo coming in, and the spectrum dues were I think around 1,16,000.
Phew.
Yeah, 1,16,000 crores.
No. One
Oh,
lakh,
sorry, 1.6 lakh.
1.16
Yeah,
lakh crore.
yeah, yeah.
See, the number's so large that we're not able to comprehend कि कितना बड़ा है. That's what she said.
So that happened. But then I think what did they do was the only thing which they could do to keep themselves profitable or still be the leader was to pay their debt.
Yeah.
And history repeats itself. Airtel again, they
Legend.
have been
Legend.
doing that. They have been, sticking around in the industry. Sab dekh liya unhone. They have been doing good. They did that again. So I think 2019, 1.6 lakh crores debt. 2024, 94,000 100 and crores, 400 crores of debt was left. So I think around 70, 80,000 they paid off in the 5 years. And because of that, their margins, EBITDA margins, went up north of
I'm
50%.
looking at the number on my screen and I can't believe it.
North of 50%. And their ARPU was at all-time highs in 2024,
Right.
rupees 230.
Wow.
So almost tripling their ARPU and cut to
So
2025.
So while, let me get this straight. While also paying off thousands of crores worth of debt, they somehow increased their average revenue per user and increased their margins by 20%.
Yes,
20%. That's a
20%.
whole entity. That's a whole company there. Oh God. And you were saying cut to
Yeah.
25.
So 25 again, 245 rupees all-time high margins, basically 3x in 5 years when it comes to their ARPU. And Spectrum dues are, I think, are at around 40,000 crores, 39,200 to
Which
be
is
precise.
doable.
Yeah.
I mean, they could pay that off at any point.
So what was really interesting was their wireless business. उसका जो cash flow था, it alone generated cash flows more than the entire company. So that helped them stay afloat.
Oh,
Yeah.
brilliant.
That was that, and they started, taking those tariff hikes. So I still remember this. I mean, Airtel, even after Jio came, Jio ने वो 3 साल dominate किया पूरा, but then Airtel, I think Airtel को आया होगा कि यार now is it's enough. We need to start taking action. But I've always seen Airtel has been the first one to hike their prices,
Correct.
and now others are following their suit.
Now even Geo is,
Yes.
right? Yeah.
So that which can be seen from their ARPU also, right? So I think they hiked their tariffs by I think 30 to 50%, and उसके वजह से they have been able to reach their ARPU. They have been able
Right.
to increase their
So I
ARPUs
think
also.
since 2019 till now, I think tariffs have been hiked 2-3 times. So you're
आराम से.
saying every session may they've hiked it by 30 to 50% each time.
Only then
Crazy.
they'll be able to 3x their
Yeah,
ARPU,
fair
right?
enough. Makes sense.
So that is there, and their net debt to EBITDA, I think it was around 2.1x.
That's
And
scary.
after 5 years, cut to 2025, it is currently at around 1.3x now.
Oh, brilliant.
So yeah,
Very
but
cool.
so that's really good. And so what is the current picture of this industry is that Airtel is second when it comes to the number of subscribers at I think around 360 million subscribers. Jio being at 447 million and Vodafone घूम रहा है 213 million subscribers.
That's how much Airtel had like 10 years ago.
Yes. ARPU में Airtel is leading 245 rupees. Jio is at I think around sub 200 rupees. And B तो छोड़ो ठीक है. Same margin wise also Airtel has been leading the pack now. Most profitable telecom entity right now. And as you mentioned, I think Asia में भी सबसे ज़्यादा ARPU इसका ही है. So that and market share mates I think around 31%. They have been still able to maintain. Jio is at 39%, but then ठीक है.
Fair. I mean, still Jio is not able to break
Yeah.
Airtel as much as they wanted to.
So I think that is that. And valuation wise, if we see again Airtel being at 9 times EV to EBITDA, Jio being at 11 times, but then that is also I think because
I
of the
mean,
anticipation.
inflated
Yeah,
EV,
yeah, yeah.
right? So, I mean, can you explain what enterprise value is to our audience?
So basically, enterprise value is your market cap. So market cap is also the number of shares which are outstanding. That into the current share price, it brings your market cap, and then you add the net debt which you have in the company right now, and you subtract it with cash. So how much debt you can repay, you subtract it, and the value which you get is your enterprise value.
You can, I mean, it's a loose way of saying that that's how much the company is
Companies,
worth
yes.
as such.
That
Minus, so they remove like debt minus
debt
cash.
cash.
तो जितना वो निकाल सकते हैं cash में वो.
जितना as of date
हाँ.
company का value है, that is enterprise value.
So that based on the profitability is what you're saying. Geo is at 11 times
11
and
times.
Airtel is at 9
9
times. So
times.
after all of this, it's still trading at a discount to the market leader
And
just
being, yeah,
because,
just because they have more scale right now, more
yeah,
the leader in
and
subscribers, but
because of the man behind the
yes, but
business.
they are the leaders when it comes to ARPU, profitability, everything. So it might just change in the future.
You never know because I think the reason why we are even doing this talk is because so Pratik and I sit opposite to each other at the office and we were deciding what stock to do and he was just looking at his trading screen and you mentioned that Bharti Airtel was doing 2%, 3% rallies every other day.
Yeah, it I think it still is near its 52-week high.
Which is
अगर market
brilliant.
follow तो I don't know, but yeah, it has been near its 52-week high since the past, I
That's
think,
crazy.
1 month or so. Yeah.
I mean, if that's how we got notified by one of the best stories I think we've ever seen in
Yeah,
the
but
market.
actually, even I didn't know so much about Airtel.
Right, but it's brilliant. I think Airtel's, so as you said, ERP was what 20% more than Geo and about 50% more than VI. So profitability crazy, story crazy, subscriber base crazy, ability to weather a storm crazy, valuation crazy. I think this is 5 signs you need to say ki take my money. But obviously this is not financial advice. But I've been a very loyal Bharti Airtel investor for 3 years now. It's been one of my top holdings.
You might have made 3x on your investments.
Maybe not. But it's a very like close to my heart stock because I've heard Mr. Mittal's story before, but this in the process of researching this company, I've realized just how much of a great story Bharti Airtel has been and will continue to be regardless of whatever pressure it faces. Clearly, it can face any problem thrown at it.
Yeah, the only problem which I think right now is, what happened with Fee, that they had to convert their spectrum debt into equity for the
So
government.
that's something that is in talks for Bharti Airtel
Yes,
as well.
that
And
might be a possibility. Now we need
yeah,
to see how the market reacts to this
correct.
particular news.
Interesting.
That could be a key monitorable
So,
now for Airtel.
so then by that logic, the government would become a small stakeholder
Yes.
in Bharti, and it won't be small. It'll be to the tune of 40,000 crores. Wow.
Yeah, that could be a key monitorable right now for Airtel, and whoever is interested, if they want to track the stock, you should be tracking this particular event.
And I think they've also partnered with Starlink, right? The
But dude, that was
the
also very
Tesla
crazy.
thing.
So what had happened was, I think in the evening we were sitting in the office, we just saw Airtel and Starlink. सबने बोला यार crazy Airtel कल फटेगा. Market खुलने के बाद Jio and Starlink also had a pact.
Oh God. भाई ये Elon Musk भी ना थोड़ा सा
Market, I think it was the Reliance का news came at 9 a.m.
they always time their news also. They just know how to play with the minds of retail investors, and we fall for it also क्योंकि पैसा तो बनाना है. But yeah, I think just Bharti Airtel, regardless of how amazingly Jio has done, like that's a whole different story.
Different
When
story.
Jio IPOs, we'll do a podcast on that. But until then, we give Bharti Airtel the due respect it deserves for being just built different. Ability to do this much damage to the industry and not take in any of the damage themselves over 30 years is incredible.
So yeah, I think we have covered the story in a lot of detail. We
Yeah.
always discuss that कि भाई आज 20 मिनट रखेंगे,
लेकिन होता ही
आज
नहीं
ज्यादा
है
नहीं बोलना है.
होता ही नहीं है we get
But
carried away.
yes.
But if you want the numbers that we've covered in this, then head to our blog. All of this will be available for you to watch, read, understand, and comprehend, like how we have been, and then absolutely shock yourself because the numbers just don't make any sense for how good they are.
But you guys could just subscribe to our newsletter also, because we
That's
also
just
give
easier.
you market view every week.
That's
So
easier.
yeah,
And that comes from our fund manager. It's not
yes.
us children doing it. Yeah.
Yeah, so you'll get a market view every week. Every week we give details about what happened in the markets, how are different commodities doing, what is the technical view, what are the fundamental views.
Right.
So yeah, it could be a good.
Great. We'll have that plug
Yes.
in the description below. So do check out our newsletter. It's something that we all write together. So it's a lot of effort that goes into it, along with the blog and the podcast. I think that's it for this week.
Yes.
Thank you so
It's
much
a
for
wrap.
tuning in. Please stay tuned for the next episode that comes next week. Do check out that free portfolio review and the newsletter and the blog. And what am I always missing?
Like, share, and subscribe.
Thank you so much. We'll see you next week. Take care.
Bye.